Welcome to our final episode of House or Home, God's Blueprint for Great Marriage. You know, if you've missed any of the episodes, we've done 10 now. You can get them on the website at livingontheedge.org and watch all of them at your convenience. But I can't think of a better way to close this series than talking to you ladies about what's a woman to do. How does it really work? That's today on Living on the Edge. A wife's second priority is to create an environment in the home, this is Roman numeral number 2, that nurtures and develops her children to fulfill God's will for their lives. To take care of the home, to manage, to rule, to be the chief operating officer, to set direction, to develop systems where love can grow, where needs can be met, where potential can be realized. And the role is, are you ready for this? The mother. And a mother, contrary to the Norman Rockwell old paintings with the serene smile and where everything looks wonderful, is a teacher, a counselor, a consoler, and a refugee, and a refuge for her kids' pains and needs and struggles. And it just takes, think about your discipling, especially maybe 2, maybe 3 different kids. You have food issues, financial issues, a guy that is really exciting to live with and a real pain at other times to live with. You've got financial demands. You've got the organization and orchestration of this needs to be repaired. Who's putting money back for the taxes? What are we going to do about the future? Should we put our kids in this school or that school? We have one special needs child. Do we spend money on counseling right now, or can we do this? Who is going to right, ladies? Guys, they do stuff. They do stuff, and when it's running really well, they do so much stuff, most of us men don't even know what you do. But you stop doing it for 2 days, and we'll just see chaos everywhere. So number 2, a mother, practical outworking. Model dependency on Christ. And I heard this in our time together, which was great. Your children, in the end, will not do, does this sound familiar? They will not do what you say. Your children, at the end of the day, will do what you do. And you are, in the words of sociologists, the primary socialization mechanism. In other words, how we pick up values, how we become who we are. The primary socialization mechanism is the home, and the most influential person in the home is the mother. The bonding, the human bonding experience apart from the marriage relationship with every single person born. You have something unique with your mother. And so you have a critical role. Mothers, by the way, in the margin you might jot down, have 2 great temptations. Temptation number 1 is to overcompensate. And temptation number 2 is to overprotect. If you had a childhood where you were neglected, you can overdose on your kids. They got to have everything. If you had a childhood where you were rejected, you can overcompensate and make sure nothing ever happens to them where they're hurt. Your nurturing wants to keep them from all this pain. And this is why it's so important that the kids have a mom and a dad. My wife's going, oh, no. I'm thinking, oh, yeah. But he might get hurt. Of course he might get hurt. How do you become a man? Skin knees are part of the deal. Oh, they're arguing. You know what? They'll figure it out. He's a mouthy little kid. That older kid's going to help him not become a mouthy little kid. Oh, but what's going to happen? And you just got to be really careful. And that's why you have to talk. But you got to just be very careful you don't overcompensate. Or if you had a super over-controlling parent or mother, you can go the other direction. Hey, do whatever you want. Make your own decisions. I was so controlled. I've got to let them spread their wings. Well, at the right time and the right way. So moms, model dependency on Christ. Second, pray for your children fervently. Pray for your children fervently. If this sounds like a parallel of what you do for your husband, it does. God will use your prayers. Many people say that John Wesley's, actually all that happened through the Wesleyan movement had to do with Susanna Wesley, his mom. who was a fervent prayer, and she had all these kids, and it was a different time, and she couldn't find any place. The kids would be outside, and she actually would sit in a chair and take her apron and just stick it over her head and just pray. The effective prayer of a righteous man, the effective prayer of a righteous woman accomplishes much. You want to see changes in your kids? We have been led to believe that it's all up to you. You got to be a perfect mom and say all the right things in all the right ways. I'll tell you what, you can't do that. You give it your best shot, but Jesus said, you seek, you ask, you knock, I'll answer. I love your kids more than you do. And I've got more power than you do. You come and ask me, and I'll be working in their heart. Doesn't relieve you of responsibility, but you got to get this weight off your shoulders, the average woman. Any problem a child ever has, the average woman, that's my problem. That's not your problem. You're not Jesus. You're not the Messiah. We only have one of them. You're just the mother. You care more deeply. It affects you more deeply. But you need to take those needs to God, and you also need to let those kids at various ages own the weight and the responsibility of them growing up and them learning to get their answers from God. Third is create structures and schedules that make family life a priority. You might jot in your notes, speed kills relationships. It just does. That which is hoped for but not scheduled rarely happens. And moms, this is where, you know what, you have this great dynamic relationship between the husband and his role and as the CEO or the leader, and you're the chief operating officer. And I know in my world, I have a very strong chief operating officer at Living on the Edge who's had tremendous success at large organizations. And we have very heated discussions about what we ought to do. And often I'll say, oh, we can do this, and we can do this, and we can do this. And he's like, no, Chip, you got to nail it before you scale it. You're always attracted to these new opportunities, and these people in Korea want to do this, and Indonesia want to do this. Tell you what, we need to nail this and get our infrastructure done before we scale it. And more often than not, I'm thinking, yeah, I know. You're right. And you know what, as a woman? You need to be telling your husband, you know what, we're going to eat dinner. We can't do all that. I appreciate your heart, but our family, you lay down the law. This is what matters. This is how we're going to do life. Sports are fine. Church ministry is fine. Lots of good things are fine. But you have to create structures and schedule times. At our home, 5:30 was sacred. Maybe it's 6:30, maybe it's 7 o'clock. But my kids knew, I knew, that woman laid down the law. You better be there. You better be there on time. And we're going to eat, and we're going to talk, and we're going to debrief, and we'll probably have some time of prayer around the table. And we're going to be a family, and it matters. And she championed that. And I obeyed. You schedule times like bedtimes. You schedule vacations. You schedule traditions. Teresa made sure birthdays were a big deal in our house. You matter. You're special. You decide what Christmas looks like. What's Thanksgiving look like? What's Easter look like? When and how do you take a break during the summer? If someone doesn't plan and schedule it, I could ask you, what happens? Busy, go, and then you don't have enough time, and you can't get into the place, and you haven't saved the money. I meet people that haven't taken a solid, great vacation in 2, 5, 10 years. That's insane. It is in time alone as a family that memories are built. Save. Spend the money. It's worth it. Now, you don't have to go to Disneyland every day, but take time to invest in your family. And ladies, again, if you don't schedule this, who will? Right? His focus, man, we got to do this at work, got to do this, right? See, part of, there's an interesting book called Leading from the Second Chair. Great leadership rarely has little to do with position. And you can not disrespect your husband's role, but a lot of the leadership needs to come. You know what? We need to plan this out. And the way you do it is by asking questions. I learned this from my wife, but my secretary, I guess she used to be a secretary. She's an executive assistant now. And I don't mean that, I didn't mean that in a dissing way. She used to just do this, and then now she does this. So she executes. And so she knows that I get too much on my plate, And she knows that I will try to do more than I can. And so people want decisions on things, and I'm not sure, so I procrastinate. And so my wife does this even more subtly and better. But I figured it out by watching how Annette does it. And so she'll come in and say, okay, here's a list of things. Now, do you want to call these people back on Tuesday or Thursday afternoon? She didn't say, when are you going to call them back? You haven't called them back. You're supposed to call them back last week. Are you? She goes, do you want to call them back on Tuesday or Thursday afternoon? I'll schedule it. See, very respectful. But you know what I know is, what she's saying is, you dropped the ball. And so Teresa, when we get together, she's the master of asking questions that help me lead well. Honey, what do you think we need to do about this situation with our son? Oh, well, thank you, as a leader, since I never even thought about that situation. Or, right? Or, what do you think we ought to do for vacation this year? We've been putting money aside because if we don't do it pretty soon, it'll probably be hard to do it to get all the schedules. When do you think we ought to do that? That's different from maybe 15 or 20 years ago when I might get, you haven't thought about vacation. You're supposed to be the leader of our home. And she would never say it quite like that, but that's how it felt. And what she learned was how to lead well from the second chair by asking the kind of questions that put the ownership back on me, but she did it in such a way that I didn't get disrespected. And so she structured in, do you want to put the kids to bed tonight or do you want me to? Oh, that's right, I'm the dad. That would be a good idea, right? We're going to have some people in from out of town. It might be a good idea to have them over for dinner. Do you want to have dinner at the normal time or such? Because I know you have a meeting. And what she is doing actually is she's being this manager, this wise glue that makes life work. She's creating a nurturing environment that helps me become the man I want to be, that I struggle with and can't do without her, that helps kids become the kids that they need to become. And it's this amazing balance of clear boundary scheduling with nurture and love. Does it make sense, ladies? That's what God wants for you. And so you create those structures, and then you teach them how to live. The greatest teacher on the face of the earth always is your mother, for better or worse. She spends more time, even if she's a working mother, she spends more time with children in their lifetime growing up than any other person, apart from some very rare instances. You are their greatest teacher. You teach them by how you live, by what you say, formally and informally. The more proactive and creative you are, the greater impact you have on your kids. And you say, well, what should we teach them? I made a list. And, this is on audio, so some of you please don't just flip out and go, oh my gosh, did you get number 7? No, relax, all right? These are things I watched my wife teach our kids. Teach them to read. Even, help them in school, but she taught all of our kids, the letters, and it was fun. Teach them to pray. Teach them to cook. Boys and girls, get their little stool out. Kids love it when they get to be a part and they get to be responsible and they gain confidence. Teach them to listen. Some kids interrupt everybody all the time, and no parent has ever said, silence thy mouth. Duct tape upon thy lips. Thou shalt not they just have, teach them how to listen and to ask questions. Teach them to celebrate. Teach them there's a time to have fun, to let it loose, and, really celebrate. And it's okay to even act goofy and celebrate. Teach them to be generous. Teach them early on and all along the way to, don't be miserly. Miserly people, they're always miserable. Just be generous. Teach them to do a craft. Kids love that. Teach him to talk. I remember watching my wife. Here I am. I'm the, quote, communicator in the family, and I had a son in a college course, and his mom helped him with his speech. But teach him to talk. Teach him in every role. Teach him to get up in front of the people and come up with a basic outline, an introduction that gets people's attention, 2 or 3 basic points with a little picture or illustration with the points, and, get them up when they're little on the hearth or whatever, and lay it on us, Just have fun. Teach them to resolve conflict. Early on, our kids learned, Matthew 18. I mean, we didn't call it Matthew 18, but, going to the brother or sister, I already told God I was really sorry, and I'm sorry for punching you in the nose, And okay, now hug, And I mean, we just pedantically went through the process of teaching them how to resolve conflict. Where are they going to learn it? Teach them how to write and put thoughts on paper. Teach them to play an instrument. Teach them to play a sport. Teach them to relax and not feel guilty. Have messages at times where they're taking a break. Hey, you know what? I think you're smart. Because you know what we're doing to our kids? Earlier, 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 more, 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 better, 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 succeed, succeed, succeed. And then they don't have a life. So they're successful at what? They're successful at becoming human doings and have little idea of what it means to be a human being. And human doings marrying other human doings end up in tragedy. You have to learn how to love, how to accept, how to relax, how to work, how to plan. See, it's a team effort. I mean, I got to be a part of a number of these things. Finally, make time for them to be available. The fact of the matter is, the best things in life aren't on your official schedule. Epiphanies, teachable moments, magical moments, heart-to-heart talks, extemporaneous deep conversations, moments where they explode in tears, moments where you lay across the bed, moments where you see I remember a part of a movie when my kids were like 5 or 6 years old, and I'm not sure why, but it touched their heart, and we went to the back bedroom and talked about it later, and my little boys both prayed to receive Christ. Times when they break up with a girlfriend, the times when they unload. So you just have to be available. And if everything is scheduled, and there's something every night, going here, there's no time to be. Boredom is a key gift to your children. Just before creativity is launched, boredom must occur. We learned in Titus 2, 3, and 5 that teaching some of the things that we talked about here, I watch my wife meet and talk with younger women. And, we have a Bible study. The last 3 years, on and off, we've had a group of 20-somethings. I have to admit I'm getting older. It's kind of hard, but the body keeps telling me it's true. And I'm afraid that I'll start teaching and giving people answers to questions nobody's asking. And so we've purposefully had 20-somethings in our house to do Bible study. And, that's when I first got introduced to, so that's how you use that iPhone. And so you mean you guys are doing that? And, the world is different. But so many of them are from broken homes, but even those that aren't. And, it was a crazy Bible study. I don't know how she did it, but we had one with about 12 and then one with about 20, which was too many. We divided subgroups for discussion. But Teresa cooked dinner for all of them every time. And so she cooked dinner, and we'd have 10 or 12 people sit around a table, and single people will come early. You talk about making time for food, they come early. And so we would sit. Sometimes we'd all be crowded, get 15 people around this one long table, and no agenda. We would just talk. And we weren't doing anything. We're just talking. Then we'd have the Bible study, and these two linger, and they're having trouble in their relationship, and this guy lingers, and he's thinking about, how 28-year-olds are thinking, should I buy these 4 pieces of property in Arizona, or should I'm thinking, don't ask me. You're so far ahead of me. But we spent this time with them, and then we did it for a year, and then we did it with another group, and then here's what just boggles my mind. I didn't have any of them say, Mr. Ingram, you're such a powerful teacher. The Bible just came alive. It was awesome. Didn't hear that one. I did hear, man, your wife's a great cook. But here's what we heard over and over. We've never seen this before. I said, seen what? Just the way you and Teresa are. What do you mean the way we are? We just, you guys, really still love each other. Well, yeah. We've never seen that before. We've never sat around a table. We've never had a home-cooked meal on any kind of regular basis and where you just talk and laugh and tease each other. I mean, that's sad. It's the norm. I don't know what it will take for you, because this is so radical. And I don't know how much courage it will require for your husband. Because for some, the implications are, your kids are small, and I'll tell you, research, and this is my background, 80% of your child's development is going to happen in the first 5 or 6 years. Their intellectual, emotional, sexual bonding and identity. And for the last 40 years, we've been outsourcing that to daycare. What we now have is the product of outsourcing our mothering and our fathering to daycare. So we could have 2 incomes, bigger houses, nicer cars, and dysfunctional families. What it would take to move against that. And I understand there's single parents that require daycare. But I mean, what if we just pulled the camera back from, well, this is where we live, and here's the cost of living, and here's my job, and here's how I do it, and I was trained for this. And by the way, you know what? Let's just say you figure out how old your kids are, and let's move it up to, say, 22 or 23. You do the math. Is that 10 years from now? 11 years from now? 16 years from now? When your kids are about 22, most of you are going to be still in your mid-40s or early 50s. You got another 30 years to play with, maybe more. But what you do in that window, especially in the first 5 to 7 years, when your kid comes home from school, who greets them? When your kid gets up, who talks to them? When your kid is in the developmental years, when that brain and personality and values and shaping and bonding are occurring, is it with a mother that gave it birth, that gave him or her birth? Or is it with a worker that has 11 other kids like that wishes they would be more quiet and stay drier and not bug her quite so much? I got up early in Atlanta when I was back home, and I left something at our headquarters, and so I got up about 5:30, and I got there at a little 10 till 6 because I had to get it and get back someplace. And then I realized I didn't have the key. And so then I went to the little Panera Bread that's, a quarter of a mile, and I parked there, waited it for open, and across the street was, Kitty Care for Caring Parents or something like that. And I watched all these BMW SUVs lined up in an affluent part of Atlanta, dropping tiny boys and tiny girls at 10 till 6 off to someone else. You sow, and then you reap. Now, I told you this could be disturbing. Is there a time to work outside the home? Absolutely. As God leads you. As a woman, you can say, you know what? These primary years, I can work during a time where I am, number one, able to provide for my husband what God calls me to and make time for me. See, that's what's missing, ladies. I'm talking about stuff that requires incredible emotional, physical, and spiritual energy. You need to have time for you to be with God. You need to have time to meet with a group of women and share your life. You need to have time to work out and take care of yourself. And you need to have some time as a woman, are you ready? To just have fun. So that all that gets into who you are, because that's what it takes to bring this kind of woman to help that man become what he can't do. And to create an environment for these kids that they don't understand. And you know what? Delayed gratification, right? For some of you, it's a 5 or 7 year window that will pay dividends for 4 decades or more. So you just have to stop and say, what kind of Thanksgiving do we want to have 15 years from now? Do we want intact families, intimacy in a marriage, grown kids that actually love God and want to be around us, and where you sit around a table, because we've always sat around a table, and you laugh and you pray and you have fun and you rejoice in what God's done and you deal with the failures and the ups and the downs because it's a grace environment? Or do you stay on the merry-go-round of demand of the 21st century? Bigger, better, faster, more. Bigger, better, faster, more. And this elusive thing that someday, if you have these things or attain these goals or get these degrees or all your kids get X SAT scores or involved in so much stuff, someone needs to call a timeout on the insanity and say, we will decide what matters. And it's going to matter first with God, then with each other, then with our family.
Well, today's pretty special. We not only wrap up today's message, but we wrap up the entire series. 10 episodes about God's blueprint for a great marriage. Now, here's what you need to understand is some of these teachings are challenging, they're countercultural, but they're from God. They work. They bring about transformation. But listening to someone teach doesn't bring about change. It's getting it in your heart, it's getting it in community, and then it's putting it into practice. And yes, there's 3 steps forward and a couple backwards, and God understands that. He wants to help you. Or you might be saying to yourself, you know, we're parents and our marriage impacts our kids. Well, we have another series called House or Home, God's Blueprint for Great Parenting. It's all on the website. You can sample them, check them out. Here's the deal. We long for you women and for you men to be the man and the woman God wants you to be in a holy covenant of marriage that brings about a beauty and an intimacy and a love in your relationship, and maybe even more importantly, a testimony to the world of the reality of Jesus Christ.